Launch control, this is Houston. We are go for launch.
Hold on to your lug nuts. It's time for an overhaul.
Turn it up, son.
I'm your huckleberry.
I don't give jobs, I hire men. You won't give me anything, and I won't give you anything.
Collision, sir.
Whoa, relax. We're not even moving.
There's no crying in baseball!
Live and statewide from Spence Broadcast Plaza, we're News New Mexico with Jim Spence and Michael Swickard. It's Tuesday, May 29, 2012. Aaron Henry Diaz is here. I'm Michael Swickard. Jerry Harden is our producer-director. You can go to newsnm.com and follow along. Marita Noon is on the Newsmaker line. Energy makes America great. .org is, you got to remember that, straight from the 7th International Conference of Climate Change. Directly from that, what do we know about the climate change now that you've spent that time?
Well, what we know is that the science is not settled. That's the main takeaway. As I was there in Chicago, I talked to you live last week from there, and now we've got the full report. But I sat through many sessions that frankly were way over my head. But on sunspots and the ocean circulation and all kinds of Pacific whatever, I can't even pronounce all this stuff because I'm not a scientist. But as I listen to these science, some of them actually argue back and forth with each other about, no, you think it's sunspots and it's the ocean, and the science is not settled even among the people who are so-called the deniers.
All right, they say it is. They say that
they being Al Gore et al. That side, there are definitely two sides in the camp. There's one side that believes that climate change is happening, that it is caused by human beings burning petroleum products and other signs of the civilized world, and that it is a crisis. There's the other side that believes that climate change is happening, but believes that it is part of a natural cycle. It has happened before, and it will happen again. And therefore, it is not man-made. Maybe man has some influence, but it's not man-made, and it's not a crisis. And so those are kind of the two basic camps that are out there. Both sides, frankly, believe that climate change is happening. The question is whether it's caused by human beings or whether it's part of nature.
Well, if you're standing in Upper Saskatchewan right now, you're rooting for climate change to get a little warmer, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm thinking so. I root for it every winter. As I'm shoveling snow off my sidewalk, I say, I'm praying for global warming. I'm praying for global warming. But, it's an interesting debate. And what's most interesting to me about it is the extreme hatred that comes out from the man-made global warming camp, which would be called the AGW camp. Normally when we talk about my column, I encourage your listeners to go to your website to read it. Today I want to encourage people to go to the posting of it on townhall.com. I have been baffled. I've been writing for townhall.com now for 11 months. I started writing for them last July. And I write a column every single week. I have a column up that has something to do, that's current, that's news-connected, that's on energy. And I have never had the kind of response I have had to this one. Now, last week, my Tombstone column had 316, I think, Facebook likes, which was a record for me. My current column on the climate change conference has, before we got on the air, had like 95 likes, so maybe 5 people could go like it and bump it over 100. But it has got 297 comments. Now, my Tombstone article had like 50 comments and 315 Facebook likes. This one has like 100 Facebook likes and 297 comments. And the comments from those who disagree with my point of view are hostile. It's just unbelievable the level of, that just comes out of these people.
Yeah, no, I definitely aggravate them, and I get that pretty regularly. In fact, in one of my venues, there's 4 or 5 people. I actually think it's one guy, and he's got several identities.
That could well be.
Smack me around quite a bit. I think that's in the playbook of some of the far left is to get 2, 3, 4 identities, and then you can gin up more by writing. There's actually a similarity of the way they put the noun and verb together. That as a former professor, I look for those things. I was just going to say
that Professor Swickard notices.
I do notice that. Now, you know the question we've never gotten to, and what is the best temperature for the Earth?
Yeah, there's questions like that you can ask them, and they don't really have an answer.
Well, again, if you were saying the temperature we had when we started the clock, the 22nd of April, 1970, a Tuesday afternoon, first time I went to Earth Day, was that the climate that was exactly the right one for the world, the entire world, nothing but the world? Is that, and so you say, if it gets a little hotter or a little colder, is that a disaster to get hotter or colder? Where are we really, where do we want to be? And all I hear is people saying, well, it's going to change and it'll be bad. And you go, not if it gets a little warmer. That would be nice.
Yeah, exactly. We had, at the Climate Change Conference, there was a whole session on the health impacts of a warmer planet. And we had medical doctors who were on that panel for the most part. And that's what they were addressing, is that frankly, a warmer planet is going to be a better planet, and that more people die of cold than die of heat, and so forth. And so they had, it was an interesting panel. In fact, for those that are interested in the topic, all of the sessions from the Heartland Conference were streamed live last week, but they're also all available on the internet, and you can watch what all. They've got the charts and the graphs and all the things that the people used in their presentations are all available to be seen on the Heartland website.
Well, I like the fact they used May as the time to do global change in Chicago, because it's not that bad. It's when they go someplace where it's a minus 30 degrees and they want to talk global warming. Yeah, I don't know.
As they did with Copenhagen. That was fun.
Copenhagen. Marita Noon, EnergyMakesAmericaGreat.org. More with her when we come back.
Welcome to Fantasy Island.
Yeah, we are doing Fantasy Island here. It is 17 minutes past the hour. Talking to Marita Noon, EnergyMakesAmericaGreat.org. Talking about global warming. Marita, the real question that I really want people to say is, how would you prove or disprove it? Let's start with what those tasks would be. That humans are the prime agent to change the climate.
Well, there's many different things that you can involve in that, but one of the key things is that you look at geologic records, and it baffles me a lot of the comments that are on the posting of mine on Town Hall. Is like, well, how many of those people are climatologists? Well, climate is a new study, and the geologists have really, I believe, a better grasp on what has happened, because they can look at the ice cores, they can look at the rock formations, they can see the evidence that the climate has changed throughout the millions of years. The climate has changed, and so that to me is a key thing. Several other things are when they talk about the changes in tenths of a degree. Back when they first started measuring this stuff, where they're saying the changes happened, we didn't have equipment accurate enough to figure out those kind of measurements back then. So it's like, okay, so who said this was happening? And there's many different ways that you can look at it. The modelers, one of the scientists that I have as a personal advisor who's in Albuquerque, used to be the dean of engineering at the University of Idaho, and he's now retired, but he attacks the modeling side of it, and he says that the climate models that they're using, if they work, you should be able to use the same inputs and model backwards and come up with an accurate result. And you don't.
That's exactly what I've written a number of times, the predictive values. You should be able to go both directions. You take whatever the change agent call it CO2 or whatever it is, and be able to take those numbers and get your numbers backwards and forwards. And a random table of numbers will get you the same results.
Marita, also, I noticed that, in your column you mentioned that Roger Helmer, member of the European Parliament, commented on alternative energy and its implications, because we know Europe has kind of been on the fast track. We know the American side. What has Europeans seen, especially now we have Germany thinking about completely dissipating all nuclear energy, and try to focus on a complete alternative energy plan?
Well, actually, the newest news, I believe it was Friday, is that Germany is now, this is not what Roger said, but that Germany is now talking about tossing their entire green agenda for energy because they're realizing it just plain doesn't work. In fact, I wrote a column probably 4 weeks ago, I think we talked about Germany, that the announcement had come out that what they were going to replace their 17 nuclear power plants in a post-Fukushima world. They announced they were going to close 17 power plants. They'd already closed, I believe the number is 8, and have the remaining 9 scheduled for closure within the next decade. And so to replace that, they announced they're building 84 new power plants. To replace 17, they're building 84. And of that 84, more than half of them are fossil fuels.
Wow.
So it puts an interesting perspective on it. And of course, as I meant, I quote Congressman Sensenbrenner in the column, who addressed that Spain has now announced that they're no longer doing any subsidies for green energy, and they just can't do it.
It's all happening because I'm completely ignoring every urge towards common sense and good judgment I've ever had.
That doesn't surprise me. We're News New Mexico. It's Tuesday, May 29, 2012. Marita, I had this moment with my brother when I was 5 years old where he was jumping off a low barn into some plowed dirt. And I looked at him and I said, "Does that hurt when you do that?" And he said, "No, if you know the secret." I said, "What's the secret?" He said, "You keep your eyes closed." So I got up on the barn and I went off the front end into a big pile of cow flop, and it hurt, That's the way I feel with these guys. They're throwing us off the front of the barn into a lot of cow flop, and it's going to hurt when you hit. And worse than that, I went in to tell on him, so I'm wiping the cow flop off me. I go into the ranch house, and they started laughing at me. Can you imagine that? Because I was telling the story that my brother had tricked me into jumping off the front of the barn instead of, Well, that's what I see these guys doing. They're tricking us into doing all these things, and it's not going to do any good. It's not going to help us.
And they're laughing at us at the same time. I think they're laughing at us.
Yes.
So, hey, let me mention, I'm going to be speaking tomorrow in Albuquerque at a lunch that people can still sign up to attend at the Embassy Suites right off of I-25 in Lomas there in Albuquerque, and the information is at energymakesamericagreat.org, and it's open to the public, and it is free, and it is lunch included.
All right, so tell us what we're talking about. What are we going to talk about, Marita?
It's lunch tomorrow?
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about energy and the economy. I imagine that I will probably talk a little bit about global warming, having just come back from that conference. Paul Gessing from the Rio Grande Foundation will be there as well as the communications director for the New Mexico Oil and Gas Association, and the chief economist from Washington, D.C., from the American Petroleum Institute will be there. So we will be talking about energy and the economy.
Well, one of the things that seems to be the hardest sell is that if we had no energy, within about a month, everyone in New Mexico, for the most part, would die. That's hard for people to understand it, but if you really understand energy, if all of a sudden there are no trucks bringing in your food and there's no energy to pump the water so that you didn't have water or food or heat, cooling, you would die in just a few weeks, wouldn't? Am I scaremongering, or is that the truth?
No, you're totally accurate. In fact, I was at a gathering last week, Thursday night, and a gentleman came up to me who had read my book, Energy Freedom, available at Amazon.com.
And it's a good book.
he came up to me and he said, the phrase that I loved from your book, and he said, I quote it all the time, and I'd kind of forgotten it, so I'm picking it back up, is that energy is what separates the third world countries from the developed world. And that's exactly what you're talking about. I'd kind of forgotten that I said that, but I appreciated him pointing it out to me.
Exactly, and of course, if you've ever been in a third world environment, you are aware how fragile their energy infrastructure is.
Yes, cooking with dung and having to have the carbon dioxide emissions in your little hut with you and so forth. I've not personally ever been in a third world country, so I have not experienced that, but that's my understanding.
So you haven't lived in a yurt?
No, I have not. No, I've actually led quite a nice life.
Haven't done any goat dung cooking. Well, I think it adds a flavor to food that I can do without.
Well, it's one I don't really care to find out.
Okay, well, Marita Noon, EnergyMakesAmericaGreat.org.